Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred We See Dead Laughing, and I'm here to do my weekly wrap up. And as usual, I've loads of books to talk about, so I'll get straight on into it and tell you about the first book that I finished this week, which was an audiobook that I was reading, and that was The Lost Flowers of Alice Hart by Holly Ringland. This book is about a little girl called Alice who is growing up in kind of a pretty difficult situation in which it's kind of clear that her mother is being physically abused by her father, and Alice kind of gets stuck in the middle of it a lot of the time. Sometimes her father also hurts her, and when we first meet her, she's only about 8 or 9 years old, and she's really struggling with this, she's very isolated from the rest of her town. Her father doesn't allow her or her mother to go out anywhere. They have to stay on the property, and then things come to a head, and eventually this kind of very bad thing happens in Alice's life, and she ends up going to live with her grandma on this flower farm. And she's never met her grandma before. She never even knew that she existed, and then she ends up going to this flower farm where she ends up learning the language of flowers, and we kind of stay with Alice as she grows up, as she grows into a woman in her late 20s, and we are kind of seeing Alice deal with everything that happened in her past, and how some things have really held her back, and how she's not really the full person that she could be yet, and there's still a lot of secrets that her family have kept from her that she doesn't know yet that could help her. And she eventually ends up going to this it's more of a deserty place in Australia, and she ends up being on her own for a while there and meeting more women, and she ends up getting into a bad relationship herself, and again it's all this part of self-discovery, this journey of Alice and her becoming her full true self. The majority of this book I really enjoyed. It's quite a long for me, because a lot of books that I get in audiobook, they're about maybe 9 or 10 hours. This one was 13 and a half hours, almost 14 hours I think, and for me that's quite long. I find them lengthy, especially when the chapters are about 30 minutes long each, which was the case with this book. And while I did enjoy the book, I enjoyed mostly I think the first half. I quite enjoyed that, but I felt that near the end of the book I lost my, not that I lost my attention span, because I was listening to the story and I was interested in the story, but I grew slightly bored of it in the end. I think it just wasn't as exciting enough for me. I found Alice as a character, I really liked her as a little girl, and then as she grew older, I felt like she was just a bit there obviously these very bad things that happened to her, but I felt like sometimes she was almost as an older woman, she almost sometimes came too much of a victim, and she said she didn't want to be a victim or whatever, but I felt like she played off as a victim sometimes, and she does end up in a very difficult situation with a man where she is being emotionally and physically abused at one point by him as well. And obviously that is terrible, but there's times where I don't know, it's almost feels as if she just walked herself into that situation, which I don't like feeling that about that kind of situation, because it's obviously so terrible and it's a very real thing that happens to a lot of women. But whatever way it was told, I just felt like she was just really stupidly blind to her feelings for this man when there were so many warnings. And as well, there was a side character who seemed to know what she was walking into and never said anything to her, and didn't even didn't give her any warning until it was almost too late. And she actually this character stopped talking to Alice at one point because of her relationship with this man. And I was like, if you know what this man is like, why have you cut contact with her instead of trying to help her? And it was just a very odd situation. But I will say that the book was quite beautifully written. I did enjoy the writing style of it. I thought it was quite lovely, and the narration was really good. I don't have the name of the narrator in front of me, but I'll leave that below. So I did enjoy the narration of it. I just think the story just was a little bit too long. Some parts of it that seemed that felt like they were supposed to be a big part of the story ended up only happening near the very end. But overall I did enjoy it. I just didn't love it, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was also an audiobook, and this was a really quick audiobook, so I managed to finish it in 2 days, and that was Crudo by Olivia Laing, and this was also narrated by Olivia Laing. This book I really enjoyed, but I actually can't really explain it, and I can't tell you why I enjoyed it. I can't even really give an adequate description of what happens in it, because I honestly just don't know, and I don't really understand it. But at the same time I enjoyed this book, and it was really weird. This book is basically told from the point of view of a woman called Kathy, and she she seems to be an older woman, maybe in her 40s or so, though at some point I'm unsure. I think she's supposed to be in her 40s, but she could be younger, I don't really know. And she's basically living in a post-Brexit, post-Donald Trump world, and it's this running commentary on the world and basically the shit show that the Western world has become with everything that's been happening. And it's just this very real kind of commentary from someone who is very aware of what is going on, but is not really in a situation where they can do anything about it except just worry and voice some opinions. And that is what she's doing. We see that, you know, she's going to get married soon, but she has also been having an affair with someone that she knows, but she loves her husband, and it's just like they're kind of not in an open relationship. It's kind of weird, but yeah, it's this really odd book that's just like this really kind of funny, odd, yet very realistic commentary on what the world is like today and what it's like to live in the world today and have a voice, but not being really able to use your voice as much as you want to use your voice because of all the crap that's going on, and how hard it is to change everything that's going on, and just the frustrations of that. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, even though I can't really give an adequate explanation of what it is about. But I feel like you kind of just have to go into it. I would recommend the audiobook. I quite enjoyed the audiobook. I think the physical book's only maybe about 140 pages, so it would be a short book if you were to read it. So I would actually recommend it for people if they were curious and wanted to check it out, and I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next book I finished was book number 4 in the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. This was Cibola? I don't know. And this basically kind of obviously continues on in the space world of Captain James Holden, who is the captain of a ship called the Rocinante, and he has 3 crew members who have basically joined him in all the adventures thus far in this series. And in this book we are following on a couple of years after the third book, the events of the third book, Abaddon's Gate, and we are kind of meeting these people who have started living on this world that previously wasn't open to people living on, but has since, you know, they were able to come in and they were able to land on this planet and kind of colonize themselves, even though they were just basically people who were homeless and needed some place to stay, but they're not actually sanctioned by any government, whether it's the Earth government or the Mars government or something called the OPA, which is kind of in between all that. They're not really officially sanctioned by anyone, and we are seeing them kind of there's kind of this faction of kind of terrorists, but like they're kind of against any kind of government coming on to this planet and taking control from them, because even though they have been the ones that have been living there, and even though the government people that want to come are kind of scientists and stuff, and they want to actually make sure the planet is safe to live on, you know, they are still very, very unwelcome. And James Holden and his crew end up getting kind of employed to go to this planet and kind of be like an impartial investigator, I guess, on this planet, and basically just be there to kind of try and keep the peace between these two, between the kind of the government people and the colonizers, as they're called. All this stuff starts happening on this planet that is just not safe, but everyone is too stubborn to kind of back off, and Holden just ends up in the middle of it and being the hero as usual. I really enjoy this one. Abaddon's Gate kind of was a bit slow for me at times, and I found myself getting a little bored of it, where this one I thought was quite fast paced, and I just really enjoy just seeing these people live on this planet and just all the different kind of complexities there and the relationships, and I enjoyed the side characters. I think one of my favourite characters will be coming back in the next book, which is Bobby Draper, who was in the second book, and I really, really love her, so I really hope she's going to come back as a proper character in the next book, in the fifth book. So yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. These are just really fun to read, they're really quick to read, and they're just really entertaining, and I have the next 3 books out from the library. I hope no one else in my library wants to take them out soon, because I have all of them, so I'll be reading them over the next couple of weeks. I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. After that I read Names for the Sea, Strangers in Iceland by Sarah Moss. This is a non-fiction book by Sarah Moss, who in 2009-2010 she spent a year in Iceland with her family. She had kind of a university post there, teaching English, I think it was, and she lived in Reykjavik, and this is kind of her story about her and her family living there, and how she felt being a foreigner in Iceland, and how she kind of dealt with the cultural differences, and just what it was like to live in Iceland, basically. So I picked this up because I'm actually going to Iceland next week. I'm going to Iceland on Tuesday with my boyfriend. We're very excited to go, and I saw Jen Campbell talk about this just shortly before Christmas, and just she like gave it a lot of high praise, and seeing as I was going to Iceland, I was like, that would actually be a really handy book for me to read before I go, just to kind of just in terms of the culture and stuff like that. So I decided to pick it up. I got it from the library, and I did really, really enjoy this. It did make me a little bit nervous in parts about going, because we have rented a car, and Sarah Moss is not very complimentary about Icelandic drivers and how kind of dangerous it can be to drive in Iceland, because people apparently are kind of crazy drivers, and I'm really nervous about driving over in Iceland, so it didn't really help me in that sense, but I'm hoping it'll be okay. If you guys never hear from me again, you know what happened. So yeah, but I did really enjoy it. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. Like, there were parts where I kind of felt my attention drift a little bit, but in terms of just kind of finding out, like, it kind of feels like she was there at this turning point in Iceland where things were kind of, you know, I can't even say what the turning point was, but it kind of feels like when she went back, like half a year later, just as a holiday, it seems like things had gotten much better in terms of kind of price things and been able to get things in shops and stuff like that. Like, it feels like if she'd gone to Iceland maybe a year later than she did, she might have found it easier to live there, and she could have ended up staying there longer with her family. I did really enjoy it. I thought it was really interesting to see how her children coped with Iceland, how her younger son, who was only 2 at the time, practically became fluent in Icelandic within a couple of weeks of being in nursery school, and how amazing children can be like that, how they can pick up those languages and cultures and stuff so easily compared to adults. And I just found that really, really interesting. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars overall. Like, I did enjoy it. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, but I did think I got a little bit out of it, and I did enjoy just learning about Iceland and Icelandic culture. And then the last book I'm going to talk about I just finished earlier, and that's No Mercy by Joanna Schaffhausen, and this is the second book in the Ellery Hathaway series, and the first book is The Vanishing Season, which I read in May last year and I really, really enjoyed. And this kind of follows on with Ellery, who was the only survivor of the serial killer when she was 14 years old, and basically she was taken by the serial killer, but she was managed, an FBI profiler found her before he could kill her, and now she is a police officer. And in this book she is kind of dealing with the fallout of things that happen in the Vanishing Season. So she is having to go to this kind of group therapy thing, and she ends up meeting a couple of people who she ends up inadvertently helping. One of them is a woman who's been raped, who asks Ellery to try and help her find the person who attacked her. And then the second person she meets is a woman who was the survivor of an arson attack over 25 years ago. But as soon as she kind of starts learning about this arson attack, Ellery starts feeling like there's things that don't add up, and she starts investigating this attack even though it happened 25 years previously, and she starts feeling like maybe the wrong man was convicted for the crime. She ends up bringing in the guy who saved her when she was 14 years old, who appeared in The Vanishing Season as well, called Reed Markham, who was an FBI profiler, and she brings him in to help her. This book is just so good. I really, really enjoyed it. The chapters in this are quite long, the same with The Vanishing Season, and the style of the chapters, they're quite long. They're about 20 pages long, which I feel are quite long for like a thriller book, but you get through them so quickly because you're just so into the story. Like, I only started reading this last night and I finished it today because I just could not put it down. I read like almost 300, between 250 pages and 300 pages just last night, and I was able to finish it really quickly today, and I was just so hooked into the story. I was so hooked into the cases. They're not as gruesome as what happened in The Vanishing Season, which is to do with like girls getting their hands cut off and the hands being left places, so it's not as gruesome as that, but it's still hard to kind of hear, because when they are talking about kind of some sexual assault cases and people they're looking into, that can be kind of difficult to hear at points. But I still really, really enjoyed this book, and I really like the relation. I really hate and love the relationship between Reed and Ellery, because like, you kind of know they probably shouldn't be together because of how they met, but at the same time there's this really weird sexual chemistry between them, and I don't know if I want them to sleep together or not. Like, I can't figure it out if I want them to get together, or if I just want them to maybe have like one kiss and never again, or if I want them to be together. I just can't figure it out, but there's this really weird chemistry between them. And yeah, and this book ended with this bombshell. Like, it ended so good, like with this big massive bombshell, that I just cannot wait for the third book because it's going to be so good. So yeah, really, really good. 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, I loved it. And I got this from Titan Books in exchange for an honest review. I forgot to say that, but really enjoyed it. So that is everything I've read this week. Please let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye!